Within the elite circles of Jingbei's socialites, a scandalous secret whispers. If you ever spot a woman behind the wheel of a car with 8888 plates, whatever you do, do not provoke her. You've just stepped into the path of that notorious 8888 Xiaomi luxury ride. Rumor has it she treats her husband like a king, yet she relentlessly craves the thrill of forbidden novelty. Her games are high stakes and degenerate. She keeps a harem of 99 men hidden in the shadows. But there is one absolute unbreakable taboo. None of them are permitted to cause a scene in front of her husband. It's common knowledge among the inner circle that the man who has stood by her for 7 years is her only weakness. However, the 100th man refused to obey the rules. Drunk on her fleeting affection, he brazenly sent me a receipt from a high-end hotel stay. The name registered on the bill was Michai. Immediately after a provocative voice message followed, "Hubby, you wouldn't believe how much I want to carry our child." I instantly recognized that voice. It belonged to Mikai. Just as I was about to confront this situation, he sent another wave of venomous taunts. "You have no idea how obsessed the queen is with me. Every single year on your birthday, and on every one of your wedding anniversaries, she sneaks away while you're asleep to bask in my bed. You're nothing more than the third wheel in our true romance." Staring at those mocking, vicious messages, my heart went cold. In that moment, I felt a sudden chilling sense of relief. I sought out Song Hao with a desperate request to help me orchestrate a fatal, untraceable plane crash. Because I know Mitai better than anyone. She would never under any circumstances grant a divorce, nor would she ever let me walk away of my own volition. She would simply descend into a state of total violent madness. After returning from my meeting with Song Hao, I received yet another clip from Fang Yuan. The video was a grueling 2.5 hours long. Within the frame of the footage, Fang Yuan was dressed in a provocative sheer cat ear outfit. The nearby table was littered with various toys meant to heighten the mood, from the kitchen to the study, and even the grand entrance hall. The two of them were entwined in every corner of the room, lost in their lust. The Mikai in that video was a stranger I had never encountered before. Every single scene felt like a serrated blade twisting in my chest. Yet driven by a masochistic impulse, I forced myself to watch the entire sordid recording until the end. In truth, I've known about Mikai's infidelities for a long time. Still, I struggled to sever the deep-rooted love I held for her. Now I must finally excise her from my life once and for all. It's like having my chest cavity brutally pried open, ripping my heart out while it's still dripping with blood, tearing it to shreds as I sat in a daze for an eternity. When my soul finally returned to my body, the house was hollow. I'm not even sure how much time drifted by before waves of agonizing cramps began tearing through my abdomen, a pain so blinding that the world started to fade to black, leaving me on the very precipice of losing consciousness. I struggled crawling like a broken mess toward the living room, yet my first instinct wasn't to dial emergency services, but to reach out to Mikai instead. The phone rang several times before she finally picked up. By this point, I was practically blacking out from the sheer agony, lacking even the strength to form coherent words. Where are you right now?" I desperately wanted to tell her how much I was suffering, begging for her to rush back to my side. But before I could even finish my sentence, Mikai cut me off with icy indifference. Her voice was breathy and seductive. "Hubby, there's some incredibly urgent business at the office," she said, her breathing suddenly becoming rapid and shallow. "So I won't be coming home tonight." The line went dead and I spiraled into total darkness. When I finally regained consciousness, I was in a hospital ward. Sung Hao was keeping watch by my bedside. His eyes bloodshot as he choked out, "You scared the hell out of me. Do you have any idea how close you came to death?" Sung Hao had originally intended to call and inform me that the arrangements for my fake death were all set, but he couldn't get through to my phone no matter how many times he tried. Consumed by worry that something had gone wrong, he rushed over, only to kick the door open and find me collapsed and unresponsive on the floor. The doctor diagnosed me with severe acute pancreatitis. By the time I was wheeled into the ERs, parts of my pancreas had already begun to dissolve. Any later and not even a miracle could have saved me. The surgery required a guardian's signature, but your wife was absolutely unreachable. Sung Hao asked if he should try calling her once more. I stared blankly at the sterile white wall, suddenly letting out a hollow laugh. "Don't bother contacting her. Not now. Not ever again." At dawn, I forced myself to endure the pain and checked out. It wasn't until noon that you finally bothered to show up. Walking over, you leaned your weight on me and opened your tablet, pointing at a lush island. "Hubby, take a look at this private island. I just bought the whole thing as a gift for you. And then, I've already broken ground on theme parks in every major city nationwide, and I plan to name every single one of them after our future child." Once the baby arrives, she was excitedly rambling on, only to realize that from the second she walked in, I hadn't uttered a single word. My face was deathly pale. Beads of cold sweat were breaking out across my forehead. "What's wrong, hubby? Are you feeling sick somewhere? I'm taking you to the hospital right this instant." Seeing me in such a state of visible agony, she panicked so hard that even her voice began to tremble. Staring at my ghastly, bloodless complexion, her heart seemed to clench with genuine pain, but I told her I'm fine. I reached out and firmly gripped her wrist. "You know how it is. My stomach has always been my weak point. I just ate something cold yesterday and flared up my gastritis. There's some medicine on the table. Could you grab it for me? My Kai immediately scrambled to fetch the pills, bringing a glass of warm water and watching me swallow them. She hesitated, frowning. Hubby, this doesn't look like the usual stomach medicine you take. I brushed it off dismissively. It's a new prescription from the doctor. My Kai didn't press the matter any further. I'm going to stay home and look after you all day today. What do you want for lunch? I'll cook. No need, I interrupted. I have a class reunion to attend this afternoon, and I need to visit a few of my old mentors tonight. Go on, attend to your own business. Once I leave the country this time, I likely won't ever set foot back here again. Meeting my friends one last time before I vanish is my way of saying a final silent goodbye. Yes, dope. Goodbye. My Kai wasn't comfortable letting me head out alone, so she insisted on tagging along. The moment the two of us entered the reunion suite, the room erupted into a chorus of knowing laughter. I told you all, if Yunmo shows up today, you can bet Mikai will be glued to his side. My Kai simply offered a graceful smile, effortlessly absorbing the group's playful teasing. She then took the luxury gifts she had prepared and personally handed them out to everyone in the room. My God, isn't this the latest model from Patek Philippe? This costs at least 6 figures. President Mi always spoils us with such extravagant gifts, but we all know we're just basking in the reflected glow of Yunmo. I had always been quite popular back in my university days. Everyone gathered here today is a dear friend of mine, and Mitai is more than willing to put in the effort to charm them, knowing full well that their happiness translates directly into mine. The group couldn't help but marvel at the transformative power of love, witnessing how a cold, untouchable goddess like Mikai had blossomed into a warm, smiling sunflower for my sake. Yunmo, I'm seriously envious of you, having a wife who adores you this much. Hearing those words of praise, I didn't beam with my usual radiant, blissful expression. Instead, I simply offered a polite, hollow smile. While the private suite was filled with joyous laughter and chatter, the door was suddenly flung wide open. Fang Yuan strutted in, looking incredibly smug in front of everyone. Why wasn't I notified about this class reunion? Don't tell me we weren't part of the same graduating class. The moment Fang Yuan made his grand entrance, the lively atmosphere took a sharp, awkward nosedive into silence. He acted completely oblivious to the group's blatant hostility, nonchalantly taking a seat directly across from me. With a smirk, he scanned the luxury gifts everyone held. A very prestigious brand indeed. Though it seems none of you realize yet that this is actually the brand I founded. Confusion and doubt began to ripple through the crowd. Everyone remembered how Mikai had ruthlessly bankrupted his family, making it impossible for him to survive in any domestic industry. How on earth could he have established such a luxury powerhouse? My family did face some unfortunate setbacks back then, but everything changed when I met my dear wife. 2 years ago, she dropped tens of billions of dollars, burned through countless elite connections, and worked tirelessly to set up this company for me. And believe me, it wasn't just this one. She's actually opened 26 different companies for me. As he spoke, Fang Yuan's gaze drifted pointedly toward Mitai, before he flashed a taunting, triumphant grin in my direction. My breath hitched in my throat as reality crashed down. I recalled a period 2 years ago when Mikai was exceptionally busy. Back then, she claimed she was aggressively expanding into overseas markets, using that as an excuse for her constant absence. But in reality, she was busy building an empire for Fang Yuan. A searing sharp pain radiated from my heart, triggering a sympathetic throb in my fresh surgical incision. I couldn't help but clutch my stomach. What happened, hubby? Are you feeling unwell again? My Kai bolted upright, her face etched with sudden anxiety. I beckoned for her to come closer. Yunmo. Honestly, how can a grown man like you be so dramatic, always dragging around this pathetic, half-dead expression? The second the words left his mouth, my Kai's face darkened with a lethal intensity, and she delivered a brutal, resounding slap across his face. If you don't shut your mouth and get out right now, I'll make sure you never speak again. Fang Yuan raised a hand to his stinging cheek, lightly sniffing his palm with a depraved smirk, laughing, Fine, I'm leaving. Don't let it ruin your mood. Once he vanished, the tension in the room eased and the party resumed its chatter. Yet my face remained as ghastly and bloodless as before. Mai Kai gripped my hand, her voice thick with worry. Hubby, tell me exactly where it hurts. The doctor she summoned would be here any minute, but I pushed her away. I'm fine. I just need to use the restroom. Don't follow me? The moment I stepped into the corridor, Fang Yuan cornered me. He sneered, Don't think that just because she hit me for you, it means you actually matter to her anymore. She and I already have a son and a daughter together. Even if they were through a surrogate, they carry our combined bloodline. Her heart is already shifting toward me. Don't believe me. All I have to do is claim the kids have a fever, and she'll come crawling to my side instantly. When I finally walked back into the private suite, Mai Kai's expression was indeed frantic and unsettled. She rushed over and planted a fleeting kiss on my cheek. Hubby, an emergency cropped up. I have to head to the office. I've already spoken to the manager here. Everything today is going on my personal tab. Just stay here and enjoy yourself with your friends. I reached out and grabbed her hand, refusing to let go. Didn't you promise to spend the entire day with me? Please, just stay. Staring into the depths of my calm, vacant eyes, for reasons she couldn't explain. A sudden surge of inexplicable panic gripped Mitai's heart. She felt a premonition that if she walked away today, she would lose something irreplaceable forever. But Fang Yuan said the children were sick, his own flesh and blood. He felt he had no choice but to go check on them. Ultimately, she pried my fingers away one by one, breaking my desperate hold. Hubby, I promise I'll be back tonight to make it up to you, okay? I took a slow, jagged breath. So Mitai's heart truly has drifted away from me. Exactly 30 minutes later, Feng Yuan sent over a new video clip. Deep down, I already knew the agony that awaited me, yet my hand trembled as I clicked to open it anyway. On screen, Feng Yuan was clinging to Mitai like a parasite. I feel like I'm dying every single second I'm away from you. I only crashed that reunion because I was craving you so badly. But seeing you acting so lovey-dovey with Yunmo, it drove me insane with jealousy. That's the only reason I let those bitter words slip. And yet you actually struck me for his sake. Think of the baby you're carrying. How could you let yourself get so worked up over a man like him? Mai Kai let out a soft, amused chuckle. It was painfully obvious that she was reveling in his obsession. She took a warm egg to gently soothe his bruised, swollen cheek. Enough. You're the one who provoked Yunmo in public. Still, I admit I was a bit too heavy-handed today. Ask for whatever you want. Consider it my way of making it up to you. The children's birthday is coming up fast. I want that private island you just purchased to be their birthday present. Mai Kai's brow furrowed. Absolutely not. That island is reserved for the child I have with Yunmo. Why are you so sure it's his kid? We were together constantly during the month you conceived. Mai Kai frowned deeper. Stop talking nonsense. This baby is definitely Yunmo's. I'm only willing to endure pregnancy because it's his. Feng Yuan's expression darkened for a split second before he forced a smile. I had a master calculate their fortunes. That island's energy perfectly aligns with our children's horoscopes. It'll guarantee their prosperity. You promised to compensate me. Please, for your loyal subject, my queen. This time, Mitai finally relented and gave in. Fang Yuan flashed a triumphant, mocking smirk directly at the camera, then followed it up with a venomous voice note. See, even the things she promised to give you, the moment I open my mouth, she'll hand them over to me instead. You lost. I sat there paralyzed, clutching my phone in a daze. I remembered when I used to get injured in the past. Mai Kai would use that same egg technique to ease my pain. It turns out that everything she once did exclusively for me, she's now doing for another man. In this moment, I feel utterly drained, soul-crushed, and exhausted. But as long as I can finally escape Mikai's reach, everything will be alright again. Tomorrow, I can finally leave this nightmare behind. That afternoon, I paid my final respects to my mentors. Right before my departure, the old master took me to a nearby Buddhist temple, insisting that the prayers here are exceptionally powerful, hoping to secure a protective talisman for my journey. Upon arriving at the sanctuary, a monk I had never met before called out my name. Are you wondering, benefactor, how I recognize you? The monk smiled warmly. A year ago, a female benefactor named Mikai donated 80 million to our humble temple. She performed a kowtow every 3 steps, kneeling from the mountain base to this hall, all to seek a blessing of safety and longevity for you. She didn't take the talisman with her back then, but chose to leave it here, asking us to chant sutras and consecrate it. My master was thrilled. Seeing such profound devotion between a husband and wife, my heart is finally at ease. I lowered my gaze, as a nostalgic yearning for our past warmth and the agony of betrayal tangled together within me, causing my hard-won composure to waver and tremble once more. Fate has brought us together today, and since the benefactor has arrived, please take this protective talisman with you. Just as I accepted the charm and turned to leave, the monk called out to stop me. Wait! Benefactor Madame Mi also requested 3 other talismans at that time. You should take them all back together. I reached out to take them, but when my eyes fell upon the names written there, I nearly burst into laughter. Engraved clearly upon them were the names of Fang, Wen and his twin children. That night, Akai returned only to find that I had already fallen asleep alone. For so many years, we had always made it a habit to wait for one another, only able to find sleep while locked in each other's embrace. This was the very first time I hadn't waited for her. A flicker of unease began to stir in Mitai's heart. She pulled me close, burying her face in my chest. I missed you so much. Hubby, even though it's only been a few hours, to me it feels like an entire century has passed. If there ever comes a day where you aren't by my side, I honestly don't think I could go on living. Is that so? I whispered under my breath. By the way, hubby, there's something I need to discuss with you. It's about that island. I had a master check the feng shui and he said it's quite unfavorable. How about I buy you 2 different islands instead? I closed my eyes. Whatever you want. Sensing the cold indifference and impatience in my tone, Mai Kai's anxiety spiked. She asked in a fragile, cautious whisper, Hubby, did I do something to upset you? No. I'm just exhausted. I took a deep, steadying breath. Our wedding anniversary is in a few days. I want to take the private jet abroad tomorrow afternoon. I ordered a custom gift overseas. and I want to personally pick it up. But you're still recovering, she fretted. That's a 15-hour flight. It's far too draining. How about I go for you? I gave a faint smile. An anniversary gift must be fetched in person. The moment I said those words, Mai Kai's heart completely melted. Fine, we'll do it your way. The next morning, Mai Kai prepared breakfast before heading out early. She claimed there was urgent business at the office. The second she left, I began packing my life away. I swung open the wardrobe, pulling out every single piece of clothing I had handmade and gifted to Mikai over the years. I shredded them into scraps and tossed them into the trash. As for all the extravagant gifts Mikai had bought me, I handed them out to the household staff. Then there were the 16 photo albums we'd filled over 3 years. Treasures we promised to cherish together until we were old and gray. I threw every single one of them into the fireplace. Mikai, having forgotten a crucial document, unexpectedly rushed back home, only to witness our memories being consumed by the roaring flames. A deafening blast went off in her mind. Ignoring everything else, she lunged into the fire, barely salvaging the charred remains of the last book. Hubby, she looked at me, her voice trembling violently. Why? Why would you burn these up? I flashed a casual smile. It's nothing. I just realized how hideous we looked in them. I didn't want to keep such ugly photos around. I walked over to her, gently lifting Mitai's scorched and blistered hand. We still have a long life ahead of us, don't we? We can always take more. Why would you reach into the fire like that? Look, see how badly you've mangled your hand. I'll call the doctor to patch you up. Witnessing the genuine concern swirling in my eyes, the chaotic panic within Mitai's heart finally began to subside. She started acting spoiled. Hubby, blow on it and the pain will go away. If her corporate subordinates could see her in this state, they'd surely swear their Ice Queen CEO had been possessed by some strange spirit. How old are you now? Have you no shame at all? I stepped forward, discreetly shielding the shredded remains of the clothes in the trash. After grabbing her documents, Mai Kai stood on her tiptoes to plant a soft kiss on my forehead. I'm heading to the office now. I'll be back by noon. Shortly after her departure, Fang Yuan sent another message, the Grand Regal Hotel. Your wife is currently here. I've got quite a show lined up for you today. I fell silent, so every time she claimed to be at the office, she was actually rushing into Fang Yuan's arms, even knowing that going there would reveal sights that would utterly shatter my soul. I found myself moving toward the hotel anyway. It turns out today was the twins' birthday. Mai Kai, her parents, and her closest friends were all gathered together to celebrate the twins' big day. They had orchestrated a lavish birthday gala within the hotel. The passing service staff openly addressed Fang Yuan as President Mi's husband, yet Mitai didn't utter a single word of protest. Instead, she and Fang Yuan exchanged a knowing look and a smile, her eyes shimmering with an undeniable tender glow. Even the Mi family parents treated Fang Yuan with a warmth and affection I had never once received. Hidden behind a pillar outside the ballroom, I overheard Mitai chatting idly with her cousin Shen Rushuang. Seriously, big sis? Do you really plan on living like this forever? Shen Rushuang frowned. You can't hide fire with paper. No matter how well you think you're concealing this, my brother-in-law is bound to find out eventually. Mai Kai gave a nonchalant laugh. I love Yunmo, but Fang Yuan is the father of my children. I can't just discard him either. Living like this for the rest of our lives, it's actually quite perfect. But what if the secret leaks out? What's your plan then? Shen Rushuang pressed on. You're betraying your marriage. This is beyond unfair to my brother-in-law. That day will never come. Haven't we managed just fine for the last 2 years? Mai Kai remained arrogant. I know I owe Yunmo everything, so I'll just double down on my devotion to him, to compensate for my mistakes. Shen Rushuang rolled her eyes with pure disdain. Do you really think love can be bought with material things? Look, because we're sisters, I'm giving you a fair warning. Your aunt is about to return to the country. She is incredibly old-fashioned, and absolutely loathes people who live such degenerate lives. You better hide your little side piece well, because if Auntie finds out about this mess, she will personally expose every single detail. At this point, I felt nothing but pure revulsion. I stumbled blindly out of the hotel, but the relentless mental toll of these past days finally pushed me past my breaking point. Everything went dark in an instant, and I collapsed right there on the cold pavement. When I finally drifted back to consciousness, I found myself in an unfamiliar opulent room. Sitting on the sofa right next to the bed was a woman dressed in a sharp high-end designer suit. She was leafing through a thick stack of documents. Though her expression was perfectly neutral, her striking glamorous features exuded an undeniable and crushing sense of authority. I sat up dazed for several seconds. Before recognizing the woman as Mitai's aunt, Liu Ruyan, she had spent years abroad, managing her empire, so I had only met her a handful of times. All I knew was that Mikai was deathly afraid of this woman, who was only 3 years her senior. Because whenever Mikai was a bratty child, her parents were too soft to discipline her, leaving the task of beating sense into her to Liu Ruyan. Mikai described her as rigid stern, and obsessed with following every rule to the letter. You're awake, Liu Ruyan snapped the folder shut. The doctor said you just had surgery and haven't recovered, and that you fainted due to extreme emotional distress. She paced toward me with measured steps. This surgery. Mikai doesn't have a clue, does she? Otherwise, she wouldn't have let you collapse alone on the street. I remained silent for a long time. Thank you for today. But please, do not tell her about any of this. Seeing that Liu Ruyan had no intention of agreeing, I whispered a desperate plea. I'm begging you. Liu Ruyan froze, caught off guard. There is clearly a rift between you and your wife. Logically, Mikai absolutely must be informed about this. But for some inexplicable reason, her iron resolve softened. And in the end, she actually agreed to keep my secret. She arranged for her people to escort me back home. Not long after I arrived, Mikai returned as well. She pulled out yet another custom-made timepiece. Hubby, look at this. Do you like it? I cast a single fleeting glance at it. The design was an exact replica of the one she gave Feng Yuan today. I couldn't help but let out a bitter hollow laugh. All this time everything had been bought in pairs. How cheap and unoriginal. No thanks. I want to visit the Little Tree Hollow. That place once held so many of our precious milestones. It's currently noon. At 3 p.m. I will be vanishing from this place forever. Going back for one last look will serve as my final silent farewell. My Kai stiffened, her expression flickering with visible panic. Because Fang Yuan had recently begged to stay there, she had handed over the keys to the Little Tree Hollow to him. He was there today, playing with the two children. All right, let's go after we finish lunch. She slipped into the kitchen to frantically text Fang Yuan, ordering him to clear out immediately. At 1 p.m. sharp, the two of us arrived at the estate. The moment I stepped inside, I sensed something was wrong. There were blatant signs that someone else had been living here. But I feigned ignorance, acting as if I noticed nothing, and headed straight upstairs. In the bedroom, there were still several photo albums of me and Mikai. Even leaving them here felt utterly repulsive. But the moment I flipped one of those albums open, I froze in place, my blood turning to ice. The photos were actually of Mikai and Fang Yuan, posing happily with those twin children. The four of them were in the lavender fields, beneath the Eiffel Tower, and high up in a hot air balloon. Every single one of these locations were places Mikai had once taken me. Places that were supposed to hold our most sacred memories. As my complexion turned a deathly shade of white, Mikai hurried over asking, "What's wrong, hubby?" I slammed the album shut, forcing a laugh. "It's nothing. I just want to go home now." As I turned to head downstairs, Mikai's phone suddenly let out a sharp ping. Her expression instantly crumbled into visible panic. "Hubby, I need to use the restroom real quick. Why don't you wait for me downstairs, okay?" I nodded and walked away. But after only a few minutes, I crept back to the bathroom door. Through the wood, I heard Mikai's frantic, hushed voice. "Didn't I tell you to take the kids and leave immediately? Why the hell are you still here? Don't you want to play something a bit more thrilling, sis?" Fang Yuan's low chuckle followed. "We've done it on your wedding bed, right in front of your marriage portraits before. But with him actually right downstairs this time, don't you think it feels even more intense than before?" Then even more repulsive sounds began to leak out. Standing outside that door, I felt absolutely nothing, no pain, no anger, just a void. I let out a soft mocking scoff, and lightened my footsteps as I retreated downstairs. I'm a survivor from the deep mountains, born to a mother who was a victim of human trafficking. My father was a pathetic drunkard, who spent his binges brutally abusing both of us. At 13, I escaped that mountain hell, and the very first thing I did was ensure my biological father was rotting behind bars. He cursed me, screaming that I'd die a miserable death. My mother gained her freedom, yet she never thanked me, because I was a living evidence of her ultimate humiliation, a festering rotten scar on her life that refused to fade. Growing up in such a twisted, warped household, I learned to build impenetrable walls around my heart, keeping every soul at a cold, calculated distance. But at 18, Mikai barged into my world like a hurricane. She was like a brilliant, inextinguishable flame, relentlessly melting the jagged ice that had encased my soul. She tenderly soothed away every ounce of my past agony. She showered me with an immeasurable amount of love, restoring my shattered ability to love someone back. Yet it was also her who waited until I was at my peak of bliss to deliver the heaviest, most agonizing blow of all. This is a wound that will never ever heal again. A few minutes later, Mikai finally emerged from the estate. I stared at her in deafening silence for a long moment, then suddenly lifted my hand to show the braided cord on my wrist. "You crafted this for me with your own two hands. But today, I noticed the colors have started to fade. Mikai, do you think your love for me will ever fade too?" How could it? Mikai's expression was the picture of sincerity. "My love for you only grows more intense with every passing day." I let out a cryptic, hollow laugh. I had originally planned to vanish into the night in silence, but now I've completely changed my mind. After playing me for a fool for 2 whole years, I will make her pay for her treacherous double dealing. I reached out and pulled her into a tight embrace. "Mikai, I love you too. So you must wait faithfully for my return, so that we can finally be together, to celebrate our 3rd wedding anniversary. Oh, by the way," I pulled out a sealed document envelope, placing it into Mitai's hands with somber gravity. "This is your anniversary gift. But you aren't allowed to open it for another 2 days." Inside were the sordid screenshots of every video Fang Yuan sent me. Once the news of my fatal plane crash reaches her this afternoon, she will undoubtedly tear this envelope open. In that moment, she will realize with crushing clarity that it was her own infidelity that drove me to utter despair, and ultimately led to the death of her most beloved husband. I want every single day of her remaining future to be consumed by agonizing pain and soul-crushing regret. I'll be waiting for you to come home. Maikai's eyes were sparkling, shimmering with hopeful expectation. Hubby, let me drive you to the airport right now. I shook my head, declining firmly. No need for that. I know how incredibly busy you are. I'm sure someone will be looking for you any second now. Maikai froze in her tracks. Was it just her imagination? Or did her husband's words drip with biting mockery? A sudden wave of inexplicable dread washed over her heart. A second later, her phone vibrated with an incoming alert. It was a message from Fang Yuan. Hey sis. That wasn't nearly enough earlier, was it? Once you drop your husband off, come back so we can finish, okay? In truth, the first time she ever crossed the line with Fang Yuan was after her parents had pressured her into drinking too much. Back then, she felt utterly defiled and disgusted with herself, wishing for nothing more than to end her own life. But Fang Yuan had collapsed onto his knees, begging for her mercy with absolutely zero dignity. Even though you utterly destroyed my family and bankrupted us, I'm still hopelessly, desperately in love with you. Mikai, without you, my life is essentially over. As long as it brings a smile to your face, I'll do absolutely anything you ask of me to earn her favor and keep her hooked. He truly abandoned every shred of his dignity. Finally, he even donned my own clothes, whispering, "You can just pretend I'm Yunmo. Everything you're too afraid to do to him, you can do to me." At that precise moment, the dark, dormant desires within Mitai were set ablaze. She harbored so many twisted fantasies about me. She wanted to lash me with a whip, to hear my voice break as I begged for mercy, and to watch me crawl at her feet, skin flayed and broken. She simply couldn't bring herself to treat me that way. But with a toy like Fang Yuan, she didn't have to hold back or feel a shred of guilt. Every sick obsession she had could be unleashed on him. Then I won't bother driving you to the airport. Safe travels, hubby. Before departing, I stole one last lingering look at her, but all I saw was the cold silhouette of her back. I whispered softly into the void. Goodbye, Mikai. May we never meet again. Several hours later, while Mikai and Fang Yue were lost in their lust on the grand estate bed, her assistant's frantic call interrupted the silence. This better be a matter of life and death. Maikai hissed, her voice dripping with sexual frustration. President Mi, we just received a catastrophic report about the master. His plane had just cleared domestic airspace when it spiraled down and crashed into the ocean. Maikai's pupils constricted in sheer horror, and every drop of blood in her veins turned to ice. What did you just say? Seconds later, her body stiffened and she collapsed. Violently retching and coughing up pools of blood, the crimson stain spread rapidly across the white sheets. Ignoring Fang Yuan's terrified shrill screams, she struggled to her feet with manic strength, stumbling blindly toward the garage like a wounded beast. Yunmo couldn't be gone, it was impossible. She had to find him herself no matter the cost. Once inside the car, her eyes fell upon the document envelope I'd left behind, still resting innocently on the passenger seat. Maikai felt as if her internal organs were being shredded. The agony intensified until it was unbearable. She gasped for air, struggling to breathe, yet the torment seeped into her very bloodstream with every inhale, becoming an all-consuming, inescapable presence. How could she have ever allowed me to pilot that plane alone? Why hadn't she bothered to arrange a crew of seasoned elite pilots to accompany me? The answer was simple: human focus is a finite resource. She had been far too preoccupied with the twins' birthday, spending every waking moment in a depraved tryst with Fang Yuan. Such trivial safety details, naturally, were the last things on her cluttered mind. The search and rescue operation lasted for 2 grueling days. They scoured hundreds of miles across the vast dark ocean, yet found absolutely no trace of any survivors. The rescue captain weighed his words with extreme caution, desperate to avoid triggering Mikai's fragile psyche. After all, her legendary devotion to Yunmo was public knowledge. Ms. Mi, when a plane goes down in the middle of the deep ocean, the chances of survival for any passenger are virtually non-existent. Therefore, as for Mr. Yun, it's highly probable that he has already perished. Mikai's tears flowed in an endless silent stream. At this moment, she collapsed like a heap of shattered glass, losing the strength to even keep herself upright, relying entirely on those around her to keep her from sinking. But the second the word perished hit her ears, her eyes turned a lethal scarlet as she shrieked, "Bullshit! How dare you curse my husband? He is not dead. I forbid any of you from saying he's gone." Her assistant struggled to pull her away from the scene. Maikai stood frozen in a daze for an eternity, before suddenly whispering in a hollow, broken voice, "Today is supposed to be our wedding anniversary. He told me to wait. He promised he'd come back to me. He had planned a magnificent grand celebration, but now the gala had transformed into a funeral." She didn't linger another second at the crash site, retreating instead to the silent, empty wedding hall. Staring up at the colossal wedding portrait in the center, fresh waves of grief-stricken tears erupted once more. The realization that while my plane was plunging into the sea, she was entangled in bed with Fang Yuan made her want to claw her own skin off and kill her past self. Yunmo, were you terrified in those final moments? She tenderly traced the lines of my face in the photograph. I promised I'd never leave you all alone. So just wait for me a little longer. I'm coming to join you. She emptied an entire bottle of sleeping pills into her mouth, clutching the wedding portrait as she slumped down, the potent chemicals taking effect with terrifying speed. However, she didn't succeed in her dance with death. The hotel manager noticed her erratic behavior and urgently dialed for an ambulance. But the unborn child she carried could not be saved. When she awoke, her parents were hovering by her side sobbing. How could you be so incredibly foolish? Did you even consider your parents before doing something so reckless? Mikai's gaze remained hollow and vacant. Just act as if you never gave birth to such an unfilial daughter. Without Yunmo by my side, I simply have no reason to keep breathing. The Mi parents were instantly overcome with grief, fainting on the spot. Liu Ruyan stared at her niece with a throbbing headache. 3 years ago, she defied the entire clan for Yunmo. And now that Yunmo is gone, she's trying to follow him into the grave as a martyr of love. What kind of magic did I possess to enchant her so completely? Just as Liu Ruyan prepared to offer some stern advice, Maikai suddenly gripped her hand. Auntie, in the car I usually drive, there's a document envelope on the passenger seat. Could you please go and get it for me? That was the final gift Yunmo left her before departing. She had already abandoned all hope of living, but before she finally closed her eyes, she needed to unwrap this one last memento. After ordering the nurses to keep a hawk-like watch on her, Liu Ruyan went personally to retrieve the envelope. By the time she returned to the ward, she was met with the sight of a strange man and 2 children in the room. The man's eyes were bloodshot as he pleaded, "Even if you don't care about anything else, think about your own flesh and blood." Liu Ruyan's brow furrowed in suspicion, her hand freezing on the door handle. What was going on? To her knowledge, Mitai and Yunmo had no children. Where on earth did this flesh and blood come from? Could it be that she had been unfaithful during her marriage? If you die, I'll take these 2 children and follow you into the afterlife. Because without you in this world, my life has absolutely no meaning. Inside the room, Mitai seemed momentarily moved, lifting a weak hand to caress Fang Yuan's face. She sighed softly. Why must you suffer so? Liu Ruyan entered with an icy expression, tossing the document envelope onto Mitai. Here's what you wanted. When Mitai tore open the envelope and retrieved its contents, Fang Yuan was still clutching her hand, pouring his heart out. Mikai, I know Yunmo never approved of me, and I'm devastated by the accident, but the dead are gone. Those of us left behind must find a way to move on. Please don't do anything reckless ever again. Let me be the one to walk by your side from now on, okay? He had endured in the shadows for so long, finally waiting for the day Yunmo was out of the picture. From this moment on, Mikai would belong to him and him alone. As he fantasized about their blissful future together, struggling to suppress the triumphant smirk tugging at his lips, he failed to notice that Mikai's expression was becoming increasingly ghastly. In the very next heartbeat, Mikai violently hurled the document straight at his face. She stood up, her countenance twisted with a deathly rage, and lunged forward, squeezing his throat with lethal force. I warned you 1,000 times. I told you I'd give you anything your greedy heart desired, as long as Yunmo never found out about this. But how dare you expose this entire mess to Yunmo? How dare you provoke him time and time again? I didn't, Fang Yuan croaked desperately, trying to lie. But his eyes fell upon the scattered papers on the floor. They were crystal clear screenshots of his chat history with me. His pupils constricted in absolute terror. He had calculated that with my immense pride and arrogance, I would simply demand a divorce or vanish in silence, rather than expose the sordid details of their betrayal. He never expected me to leave such a parting gift before I died. Mikai's grip tightened further, cutting off his air. At this moment, she was consumed by a soul-crushing regret. Why hadn't she just wiped this parasite out years ago? Just seconds before she could choke the life out of Fang Yuan, Liu Ruyan forcibly pried her away. Enough. Are you actually trying to commit murder now? Gasping for air after his brush with death, Fang Yuan was paralyzed by the raw terror of the abyss. He stared at Mitai with utter shattered disbelief. I sacrificed so much for you, and you actually tried to kill me. He had always coveted Mitai's immense wealth and power, but his feelings for her were undeniably real. Yet in this instant, all that love curdled into poisonous hate. Since things have escalated to this point, do you really think this is all my fault alone? If you hadn't chosen to tryst with me over and over again, would I have ever had the chance to torment Yunmo? Now you're trying to pin all the blame on me alone. Keep dreaming. Let me tell you something, that crash wasn't some accident. He was utterly broken and completely devastated. He chose to end it himself. And the real monster who drove him to suicide is you. Maikai was frozen in place by those words, shrouded in a heavy silence. In that moment, every suspicious detail from the past few days flashed before her eyes, and a startling realization suddenly sparked in her mind. A moment later, she burst into a frantic, hysterical laugh. Yunmo isn't dead. He must be hiding somewhere. He has to be. She knew me better than anyone. I was as resilient and tenacious as a wild weed. and I would never take my own life. I would only choose to abandon her, to vanish into a corner of the world where she could never find me. I understood her just as well, knowing she would never agree to a divorce. Find out immediately who Yunmo has contacted recently. 3 months had passed since I arrived overseas. During this time, I kept the curtains tightly drawn, spending my days staring into the void of my room. I knew this crushing depression was because of Mikai, even though I had cut her out of my life. The past was too deeply etched into my soul, to the point where she had become a fundamental habit of my existence. When Songhao invited me out for dinner, and I tasted a dish I really loved, I instinctively turned to the empty space beside me and said, "Wife, this is delicious. Could you try to recreate this for me at home?" Both Songhao and I were momentarily stunned by the slip. When I went to bed at night, I would habitually reach out to embrace the person beside me, only to grasp at nothing but cold, empty air. That was when the insomnia would kick in. Over the past few years, my Kai had so tenderly and thoroughly permeated every single aspect of my life. I simply needed more time to readjust to the reality of being alone, to completely excise Mikai from the depths of my being. 3 months later, I had finally settled into my new rhythm. In university, I had earned a dual degree in software engineering and artificial intelligence. I truly found my passion in programming because in this binary realm constructed of ones and zeros, everything is absolute and predictable. Once you master the logic, you can wield that certainty to forge endless new possibilities. I crave this sense of control, this solid, tangible stability. Since graduation, I've dedicated myself to this field, accumulating a formidable amount of high-level expertise, which is why I've recently begun developing my own tech prototype. Roughly 3 months later, the R&D phase reached a successful conclusion. I sourced various factories to self-fund a limited production run. After clearing the necessary bureaucratic hurdles, the product was officially launched into the market. I originally intended only to test the waters, but the reception was unexpectedly explosive. Not only did it captivate a massive wave of consumers, but a swarm of high-profile investors were desperate to partner with me. I had no desire to step into the spotlight, fearing that being recognized would invite nothing but unwanted chaos into my life. Instead, I delegated full authority to Songhao to handle all negotiations. From a sea of competing corporations, Songhao selected the most generous and powerful contender in the industry. Once both parties finalized the terms online, they prepared for the formal physical signing. As fate would have it, the CEO of that corporation was currently visiting this small town, meaning Songhao didn't have to travel far. He could simply meet the CEO directly to ink the deal. At the scheduled hour, Songhao stepped into the designated meeting place. The moment her eyes fell upon Songhao, Liu Ruyan was visibly stunned. If her memory served her correctly, this young man across from her was Songhao, Yunmo's most trusted confidant. According to the evidence Mikai had unearthed, the doomed aircraft had been under remote pilot control, and Songhao was an elite specialist in exactly that field. That proved Yunmo hadn't perished in the abyss. The plane that plummeted was nothing more than an empty shell. Furthermore, before the accident, I had only made 2 phone calls, both to Songhao. It was highly likely that Songhao had orchestrated my disappearance. So with him appearing right here, right now, did it mean that Yunmo was nearby as well? Songhao didn't recognize Liu Ruyan, completely unaware that he had just exposed himself. The moment he left, Liu Ruyan summoned her assistant inside. Track down exactly where he's staying, and find out who he's living with. Just as the assistant turned to leave, Liu Ruyan called out to him once more. That boy, is there still no sign of him? When Liu Ruyan was just 9, she was framed by her family's enemies, resulting in her being abducted by human traffickers and dragged into a remote, desolate mountain village. Surrounded by hundreds of miles of endless peaks, she found it impossible to find a way out. Just when she feared her entire existence was destined to rot away in that hellhole, a young boy named Zhao Tai saved her life. He led her through a secret path she'd never seen, pressing a few rock-hard steam buns into her palms. Just keep running straight from here. By tomorrow afternoon, you'll have made it out. Liu Ruyan grabbed him. Then come with me. If they find out you let me escape, they'll beat you to death. The boy shook his head. I can't leave. If I go, I have to take my mother with me. But they broke her legs, so she can't walk. He fell silent for a long beat. Sister, once you're out, please call the police for me. My mom was kidnapped and brought here too. After Liu Ruyan escaped, she suffered a life-threatening illness. When she woke, the location of that village had vanished from her memory. She only remembered those stubborn, defiant eyes, the bowl-sized scar on his ankle, and his name Zhao Tai. She had spent years searching. Her assistant shook his head. President Liu, there are far too many men in this country sharing that exact same name. We're still vetting the remaining candidates. Liu Ruyan suppressed the crushing disappointment in her heart, waving him away. Go get back to work. A few days later, Songhao dragged me out to a local tavern for some drinks. We spent the evening dodging women trying to hit on us. That person I met during the signing a few days ago, she was drop-dead gorgeous, absolutely ethereal. But man, her aura was terrifying. It felt so incredibly oppressive. I didn't even dare ask for her personal contact info, Song Hao said. He sighed dejectedly. Why the hell did I chicken out back then? What a total waste. Who knows when I'll ever cross paths with a world-class Yusol Gitsuyiso, top-tier goddess like that ever again. But in less than a heartbeat, he perked right back up. Yo, that girl who just walked by is a total baddie. She's exactly my type. I'll be right back. Not long after he bolted, I felt the sofa cushion beside me sink down. Assuming it was Song Hao, I reached out to lean against his shoulder. Asking lazily, back already, that was fast. The moment I leaned in, I realized it definitely wasn't him. I shot up like a spring, accidentally knocking over my drink in the process, and soaking my coat in booze. As I frantically tried to blot out the stains, I stammered an apology to the stranger. I'm so sorry. I thought you were... It's fine, Liu Ruyan interrupted coolly. My heart stopped. That voice? I snapped my head up. Liu Ruyan. In an instant, a jolt of pure terror surged from my spine to my skull. Why on earth was she here? Does Mikai know I faked my death? A million questions raced through my mind like wildfire, but I didn't have time to process any of them. Only one word was screaming in my brain, run. But the second I turned to bolt, Liu Ruyan's hand clamped firmly around my wrist. Why are you running? It's not like I'm going to hurt you. Liu Ruyan maintained her signature icy composure. However, you're coming back home with me to see Mikai. I turned back to face her. Ms. Liu, where I choose to go is my own business. You have no right to interfere. Now please, let go of me. Technically true, yet Liu Ruyan didn't budge. Instead, her grip tightened. But because of your death, Mikai tried to end her own life. Once she suspected you were still alive, she began searching the entire globe like a mad woman. Between the grief and the sudden hope, her mental state has become dangerously unstable. Don't you think you owe it to her to go back and face her, just to put an end to this mess? Hearing this, I fell into a long, heavy silence. There's no reason for us to ever meet again. He and I are nothing but total strangers now. Liu Ruyan's brow furrowed slightly. Mikai committed adultery while married. That was her grave mistake. You can simply divorce her, instead of running away like a coward. Perhaps I'm running, but if there were any other choice, who would willingly abandon their entire life, just to hide under a false identity? I chose this path, not only to exact revenge for her betrayal, but to ensure she never has the chance to cling to me again. I let out a mocking scoff. You don't understand her at all. She won't grant me a divorce, and she will never let go. She's capable of doing something utterly insane. If you truly care about her well-being, then never mention that you encountered me. Liu Ruyan was visibly taken aback, subconsciously loosening her iron grip. I seized that split second of her daze and bolted out of the building at full speed. Song Hao and I bought plane tickets and fled the country that very night. But the day after we settled into our new hideout, the moment I pushed open my front door, 2 rows of professional bodyguards were standing at attention. Watching Liu Ruyan step out of a luxury sedan, I sighed in frustration. What more do you want? I'm here to propose a business deal. I want you to stay within my line of sight. In exchange, I will grant you full access to the core technology of every single tech giant under my umbrella. She had clearly done a deep dive into my background. She knew about my absolute obsession with high-tech innovation. The terms she was offering were a temptation I simply couldn't refuse. As long as I agreed to stay, she could gradually persuade me to face Mitai. Of course you're free to decline, she added. But no matter where you run in this world, my people will be tailing your every move. Comparatively, accepting the deal is far more profitable. I cursed her as a predatory capitalist under my breath. But with no other choice, I eventually surrendered to her terms. Liu Ruyan arranged a private villa for me near her headquarters. It's close to the main office, she noted, making it convenient for your research and visits. After her departure, Song Hao frustratedly smacked his own forehead. Talk about a literal nightmare. Life is just one big cruel joke. If I had known she was Michai's biological aunt, I would have given my tech away for free, before ever seeking a partnership with her. I'm so incredibly sorry, Yunmo. It's not your fault. I sighed, feeling utterly defeated. The world is vast, but who could have predicted we'd stumble right into a company owned by Liu Ruyan? For now, I had no choice but to settle in. I spent my days absorbing knowledge at Liu Ruyan's firm, and my nights perfecting my own innovations. Every few days, Liu Ruyan would drop by, always persistent, urging me to agree to a meeting with Mikai. One day upon returning from the office, I found Liu Ruyan lounging in the living room once more. But standing beside her was a visibly trembling Mikai. The exact second our eyes locked, Mikai's eyes welled up with a crimson sorrow, and her tears began to fall uncontrollably. For 7 grueling months, 214 days, she had been haunted by my face even in her sleep, aching for this reunion. Yet now that I was here, she stood paralyzed, unable to move a muscle. She was terrified that this was merely a cruel hallucination, and even more frightened of what she might see. The freezing indifference and pure disgust in my gaze. Yunmo, she whispered, her voice cracking. I cast a single glance at her before immediately looking away, turning a cold, piercing glare toward Liu Ruyan instead. Liu Ruyan was a titan of the business world, accustomed to being the one who looked down on others. This was the first time someone had dared to give her the cold shoulder. She let out an awkward, uncomfortable cough. Since you've seemed much more emotionally stable lately, I took the liberty of informing Mitai. The infidelity was her mistake, but faking your death was a lapse in judgment on your part too. So now, I expect both of you to sit down and have a rational discussion. I let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Rational. Liu Ruyan, imagine you get married someday, and your husband cheats fathering 2 children behind your back, deceiving you for 2 entire years. Imagine him repeatedly, defiling your most sacred places with another woman. Would you really be able to remain calm and talk then? Liu Ruyan was left speechless by my sharp retort, while Mikai lowered her head, her face turning a ghostly pale. Mikai, I called out to her, I faked my death, specifically because I never wanted to be associated with you again. But since you've managed to hunt me down, let me make things crystal clear for you once and for all. There is absolutely zero chance for us. Don't harbor any delusional fantasies, thinking that pestering me will somehow earn my forgiveness or lead to some fairy tale reconciliation. I fell silent for a heartbeat. That day when you and Feng Yuan were in bed at the estate, I was standing right outside the door listening to everything. That is a memory I will never be able to erase. If you have even a shred of respect left for our past, then stay the hell away from me. Because now every time I look at you, I'm reminded of that moment and I want to vomit. My Kai looked utterly devastated, her spirit crushed. She lunged forward and grabbed my hand, sobbing incoherently. I was wrong. It's all my fault. You can punish me however you want. Even if you want to kill me to vent your rage, I'll accept it. Just, please don't abandon me. Yunmo, I can't survive in a world without you. I wrenched my hand away. What would I want with your life? As for how you choose to survive, that is no longer any of my concern. I suddenly let out a dry, mocking laugh. Don't you and Feng Yuan have a pair of children together? Didn't your entire family know about them and officially acknowledge his place? You have a complete family now. You can go live happily ever after with him. My Kai grabbed my hand again, desperately trying to explain. I've already cut ties with him for good. I swear I'll never see him again. I'm begging you, Utz. Just give me one single chance to make amends. She had completely lost all sense of pride, nearly dropping to her knees in a pathetic plea. I hauled her up, snapping, Do you even understand English? I said there is absolutely no possibility for us anymore. Stop this meaningless, exhausting harassment. I simply can't lose you. My Kai was sobbing so violently, she could barely speak. Standing to the side, Liu Ruyan couldn't help but sigh. Though she was only 3 years older than Mikai, she had essentially watched her grow up. She had never seen him look so utterly pathetic and undignified. On my end, I was being driven insane by Mikai's incessant wailing. My heart hardened with a sudden, ruthless resolve. I shoved Mikai aside and firmly cupped Liu Ruyan's face. Before her shocked and wide-eyed gaze, I planted a deep, unmistakable kiss right on her lips. The sound of Mikai's sobbing was instantly choked off by the shock. There is no us anymore, I declared. Because I've set my sights on your aunt now. Liu Ruyan's pupils constricted in absolute disbelief. Mikai's face was deathly pale. Yunmo, don't say such spiteful things just to hurt me. Why, you don't believe me? Your aunt is a titan of industry. And she is breathtakingly beautiful. Most importantly, she's clean. So is it really so strange that I've fallen for her? I let out a smirk, leaning in to kiss Liu Ruyan once more. Liu Ruyan's icy stoic mask finally shattered into pieces. She was half seething with rage and half paralyzed by a frantic panic as she stumbled back several steps. I walked over slowly and possessively wrapped my arm around her waist. On the surface, I was wearing a triumphant grin. But internally, I was utterly repulsed by Liu Ruyan. If it hadn't been for her meddling, my Kai might never have tracked me down for the rest of her life. My peaceful, quiet existence wouldn't have been violently disrupted. Since she brought this massive headache to my doorstep, I had to give her a little thank you gift in return. I tilted my head and kissed her cheek. Auntie, what perfume are you wearing? It smells intoxicating. Liu Ruyan, in all her years, had never been this physically intimate with the opposite sex. She never could have imagined in her wildest dreams that one day she would be subjected to her own niece's husband, forcing 2 kisses upon her in a row. She violently shoved me away. You, she stammered and sputtered, unable to form a coherent sentence. With a storm of unvented fury swirling in her chest, she finally spun around and slammed the door as she stormed out. I turned back to Mikai with a smile. Do you need me to continue proving it to you? Mikai collapsed onto the floor, her face devoid of all color. She knew me far too well. Just by looking into my eyes, she could decipher exactly what was on my mind. She knew perfectly well I was doing this just to spite her, that I was desperately trying to make her give up, yet witnessing me lock lips with another woman still left her heart aching so intensely she could barely breathe. A crushing thought struck Mitai back when I uncovered her betrayal, and watched those repulsive videos of her and Feng Yuan had my heart bled 10,000 times more than hers did now. She squeezed her eyes shut, letting the bitter tears escape from beneath her trembling lids. Having reached this point of no return, She had absolutely no one left to blame. She was the one who had single-handedly sabotaged everything. The following morning, I headed back to Liu Ruyan's headquarters to continue my studies. While waiting for the elevator, I crossed paths with Liu Ruyan herself. At the sight of me, her face cycled through shades of blue, white, and red. A few seconds later, she turned with a grimace and stormed toward the stairwell instead. 20 minutes later, her assistant was trailing behind Liu Ruyan, gasping for air as they finally reached the penthouse floor. The poor man couldn't help but curse his boss's sudden insanity. Why on earth would she skip the elevator? To manually trek up 20-something flights of stairs? It was enough to send anyone to an early grave. When I returned to the villa that evening, the enticing aroma of home-cooked food filled the air. Assuming it was just Song Hao in the kitchen, I was stunned when a moment later, my Kai emerged wearing an apron carrying a steaming platter. "You're home. Everything is ready just in time. Go wash up and let's eat." Amidst the swirling steam rising from the dishes, I felt myself dazed for a fleeting instant as this exact scene had played out countless times over the past 3 years. No matter how hectic her schedule, my Kai always raced home to prepare dinner before I arrived. The door would open to that intoxicating scent of food, followed immediately by Mikai's warm embrace. That specific scenario used to be my very definition of bliss. But after all the trauma that had transpired, the world had changed and the people in it were no longer the same. I reached for the dish on the table and coldly dumped the entire thing into the trash can. I made myself perfectly clear yesterday. Stop wasting your time on these pathetic gestures. My Kai's face drained of color instantly, her forced smile freezing painfully on her lips. But after a few seconds, she tried to smile again. "Is the menu not to your liking? I'll just whip up something else." My expression remained frozen and full of irritation. "Mikai, do you really need me to repeat every single word I said yesterday? You can say it as many times as you like," she replied, taking the empty plate back into the kitchen. Her voice was eerily calm. "But I'm not listening. I'm not leaving your side. And I'm certainly not giving up. So starting from today, I am staying right here to take care of you. Until you either forgive me or I draw my last breath. You're staying here fine. Then I'm the one leaving." The moment I took a step toward the door, my Kai spoke up with a chilling indifference. "If you vanish from my life a second time, your partner Sung Hao, along with your friends and mentors back home, I will ensure that in every corner of this world, they have absolutely no place left to stand." My entire body instantly locked up in rage. "Mikai, do you have no shame? You're being utterly shameless." "I didn't want it to come to this," she said, expertly slicing vegetables. Yet her focus slipped and the blade sliced deep into her finger. She stared blankly at the oozing blood for a beat before saying, "But this is the most effective leverage I have, isn't it?" I gave her no response. The massive villa was swallowed by a suffocating silence. She quickly prepared a fresh meal and brought it out, but I had no appetite and zero desire to look at her, so I stormed upstairs to bed. My Kai followed with the tray. "Are you tired? At least eat something before you sleep." I yanked the covers over my head. "Get out." "All right then. Whenever you feel hungry, I'll cook a fresh batch." Mikai carried the food back down only to return a moment later. She wrapped her arms around me from behind, her left hand locking tightly around my waist. "What are you doing?" "Let go." I struggled against her grip. "Don't move. Hubby, just let me hold you for a moment." She held me in a vice-like embrace, her head resting heavily against my back, letting out a deep, satisfied sigh. After more than 7 agonizing months, she finally had the person she loved back in her arms. In this fleeting moment, her wandering, hollow soul finally returned to her body. This long-lost sense of security and stability caused her eyes to burn with a crimson sting. She whispered in a broken voice, "Yunmo, I missed you. I missed you so damn much." A wave of profound sorrow suddenly washed over me. Her love was undeniable, and yet, if she loved me this much, why did she betray me? Why destroy the sacred bond between two people who spent years building a life together? Regret is useless when the damage is already done. "Mikai, I can't erase the memory of your infidelity, and I can't forgive you. We're finished. What is the point of this pathetic display? Let's just end this with some shred of dignity." My Kai remained deathly silent, only tightening her desperate grip around me. As the moon reached its peak in the sky, she finally released her hold and stepped back. "I know my presence is repulsive to you, so I'll sleep in the guest room tonight." She leaned down instinctively, longing to give me a goodnight kiss like she used to, but ultimately pulled away and stood up straight. Once she left the room, I was haunted by a sleepless night. I didn't drift off until the first light of dawn. It was nearly noon, when a persistent ringing phone jolted me awake. "Why haven't you shown up at the office today?" I took a moment to process the voice, realizing the call was from none other than Liu Ruyan. I wasn't in the mood for pleasantries. "Whether I show up or not is none of your business. Do I look like I need to report my schedule to you? Are you that bored?" Liu Ruyan was stunned by my abrasive retort. Before she could even manage a comeback, I had already disconnected the call. Staring at the red call-ended screen on her phone, Liu Ruyan suddenly burst into a fit of frustrated laughter. Was she losing her mind today? Why did she care if he showed up or not? Why did she feel the urge to call and check on him, only to be verbally thrashed for her effort? Now that I was awake, sleep was out of the question. I freshened up and headed downstairs, finding Mitai waiting with the freshly prepared lunch. Seeing me reach for my coat to head out, Mai Kai stood up from the dining table, asking with a fragile, cautious tone, Yun Mo, lunch is ready. Won't you eat at home? Seeing you completely kills my appetite. If I keep eating at home, I'll eventually starve to death. Mai Kai lowered her head. Then, please come back early tonight. The only response she received was the thunderous slam of the door. Mai Kai knew I was drowning in resentment and fury, but she believed our years of history couldn't be erased. She thought once I vented my rage and calmed down, there would surely be a chance to salvage our relationship. But she knew the wait would be an agonizing torture. She forced a bitter smile, no matter how painful she brought this on herself. I stormed out of the villa, possessing absolutely zero desire for lunch. My chest was tightened with pure, unadulterated irritation. I used to watch Song Hao's toxic cycles with his girlfriends, and felt nothing but confusion. If the love is dead, you leave. If the love is there, you stay. Why subject yourself to an endless, messy entanglement? But now I finally understand. Love has a terrifying momentum. Even after you've decided to abandon it, that inertia continues to tear your heart to shreds, leaving behind a lingering, constant ache. Consumed by this internal chaos, I headed to the most prestigious club in the city, and recklessly summoned a dozen hostesses to my room. One girl took a deep sip of expensive liquor, and leaned in intending to pass it to me mouth to mouth. I didn't bother to pull away. Just as our lips were about to touch, the door was violently kicked open with a loud bang. The hostess was roughly shoved aside by Liu Ruyan, whose expression was as cold as a glacier. She swept a lethal gaze across the room. Everyone get the hell out. Then her eyes locked onto mine. Do you have even the slightest clue what you're doing? I leaned back against the leather sofa, sipping my drink. I know exactly what I'm doing. But what does my personal business have to do with you? I paid for these women to be here. You have no right to kick them out. If anyone should leave, it's you. Stop ruining my fun. The two of us had barely exchanged a few words before a frantic Mikai, tipped off by a message, rushed into the room. Her eyes scanned the crowd of women in the booth, overflowing with a dark, murderous intent. But in the very next heartbeat, she looked at me with a desperate, pleading gaze and whispered to me, Hubby, can we please just go home? These women are so filthy. I let out a mocking scoff. They're filthy, and what you think you're actually clean. My Kai froze in place, her face draining of all color. I know you've got people stalking my every move, which is why you managed to crawl over here so fast. But let me break it down for you. If you're allowed to keep a side piece like him, then why the hell can't I play around with other women? Don't you dare come barging in to kill my vibe next time. It's a total buzzkill. Why don't you search your conscience? Even when I knew exactly what was going on with you and Feng Yuan, when you were sneaking around to have your little trysts impeached, didn't I play the fool just to let you enjoy your happiness? When did I ever act like a psycho and crash your parties? My Kai's complexion had turned a deathly ashen white. I turned my cold, derisive gaze toward Liu Ruyan. Auntie, haven't you left yet? When it comes to me looking for a little female company, even my official wife here has no right to interfere. So who the hell do you think you are, trying to dictate how I live my life? If you're really that bored, I suggest you go find some grass to kick. Both of you get out of this room right now, and make sure the door hits you on the way out. Mai Kai knew she was the one who had crossed the line first, and she had absolutely no leverage to control me now. But how could she possibly just walk away, leaving me here to revel in the arms of other women? Just the mere thought of it was enough to make her mind explode with jealousy. Meanwhile, Liu Ruyan's chest heaved with suppressed fury. She was livid at my blatant disrespect, but even more furious at herself for acting like a lunatic. She was supposed to be here for a business deal, yet the moment she saw me about to kiss someone else, she had charged in without a single second thought. Why was she even bothering with him? While the atmosphere was at a suffocating standstill, a man suddenly burst into the private booth. He lunged forward and grabbed onto Mikai. Mikai, how can you be so heartless? How can you just ignore whether your own children live or die? That voice was one I could recognize anywhere. It was Feng Yuan. Ever since Mikai nearly choked him to death, the two had become nothing but bitter enemies. Mai Kai had immediately frozen all of Feng Yuan's bank accounts, reclaimed the 26 companies she had established for him, along with 5 sprawling estates, 6 luxury villas, and various other real estate holdings. Every luxury car she had gifted him, and his collection of high-end watches were demanded back. In the blink of an eye, Feng Yuan was transformed into a penniless loser drowning in debt. He couldn't stomach this brutal reality. In desperation, he sought out Michai's parents, begging the elders to intervene on his behalf. Mai Kai had completely abandoned those 2 children. Now the kids were struggling just to survive with him. Mai Kai's mother heart, aching for her grandkids, immediately dialed her daughter's number, hoping to mediate and mend their fractured relationship. Mikai, you were just saying how you'd take care of Feng Yuan? How can you treat him so cruelly now that Yun Mo is already dead and gone? Are you really going to abandon your own children for a ghost? They are your own flesh and blood. At that time, my Kai was already frantic, losing her mind trying to track me down. Hearing her mother's words, she replied with icy detachment, "Mom, if you take in Fang Yuan and those two brats, consider our relationship officially severed. If you still want me as your daughter, then kick those three out of your house immediately." Her mother initially dismissed it as a heat-of-the-moment threat, allowing Fang Yuan to stay in the family mansion. But to her horror, the very next day, Mai Kai broadcasted a message through every major media outlet, declaring she had cut all ties with her parents, and flew back home instantly to finalize the legal paperwork. The shock nearly gave her mother a fatal heart attack. Once recovered, she threw Fang Yuan out into the night, never daring to offer him a single cent of aid again. Grandchildren were precious, but her daughter was her true lifeblood. Fang Yuan had lost his final safety net, falling into a life of absolute squalor and misery. This time, he finally caught wind of Mikai's location, and scraped together every penny for the fare to hunt her down. Based on their past affection, he believed that if he just begged hard enough, even if she wouldn't shower him with riches like before, she would at least open her wallet to guarantee him a comfortable life for the rest of his days. Otherwise, how is he supposed to survive the future? He's become addicted to a life of luxury and excess. Working a regular job is completely beneath him. To him, a life of labor is no different from death itself. Mikai, you can't be this heartless. Just look at these two children. Look at how thin and frail they've become. You are their mother, for God's sake. They say a mother's love is boundless. So how can you just turn your back on them? The children have already learned to call for their mama. On cue, the two kids whimpered in unison. Mama, mama. Watching from the sidelines, I burst into a cynical laugh. The scene playing out before me was utterly farcical. Mikai's face, however, turned a grim shade of ashen green. She barked an order for security to drag Fang Yuan out, but he clung to her like a parasite refusing to let go. He shrieked that the children couldn't grow up motherless, that one night as a couple means 100 nights of gratitude, begging her not to be so cold-blooded, after all the passionate nights they had shared. Even Liu Ruyan was becoming visibly agitated by the spectacle. She instinctively glanced over at me, but I was watching the drama with absolute relish, leisurely peeling fruit and enjoying the show. In truth, though, Liu Ruyan had been abroad for years. She had heard whispers of the saga between Mikai and me. She had even stumbled upon our romantic couple videos. Back then, the way I looked at Mikai was filled with such obvious, overflowing adoration. I used to get riled up, just because she spared another man a glance. I would be drowning in jealousy not standing here like this, with eyes full of nothing but freezing indifference. I looked as though I were staring at a total stranger. Just how many times must a heart be shattered before a person becomes completely unrecognizable? She lowered her head, feeling a rare and sudden pang of guilt. When she leaked my location to Mikai, had she made a terrible mistake? After a long, desperate struggle, Fang Yuan was finally hauled away by the guards. His pathetic wails echoed all the way down the hall. My Kai looked at me, her eyes filled with shame. Yunmo, don't you dare say a single word. I stood up and headed for the exit. The mere sound of your voice makes me want to gag. My Kai was left behind a picture of panic and utter despair. Her expression was a haunting mirror of Fang Yuan, who had just been dragged away. I didn't return home that night. My Kai eventually tracked me down by the riverbank. It's freezing here. Let's just go home, home. There is no home left between us. I stared blankly at the moon's reflection on the water. Mikai, I'm literally begging you. Just leave. I nearly sacrificed half my life for this pathetic love of ours. What more do you want from me? Do I have to die before you'll finally let me go? Mikai's eyes turned a violent bloodshot red. Her lips trembled as she whispered, Yunmo. Mikai, give me a way out, a path to survive. If I'm forced to face you for the rest of my life, then I'd rather hurl myself into this river. At least then I'd die with some dignity. I'm sorry, Mikai lunged forward, sobbing hysterically as she clung to me. It's all my fault, but I can't let you leave. I can't exist without you. I looked at her. After a long silence, I scoffed and shoved her away. You keep running your mouth about how much you love me, but it turns out you only care about yourself. I turned to walk away when Sunghao's call suddenly vibrated in my pocket. Yunmo, there's something you need to know. Since your old SIM card was deactivated, the hospital couldn't track you down, so they called me instead. Your biological mother, she's in critical condition. She wants to see you one last time. I froze in my tracks. Even knowing the country was Mitai's territory, and that escaping again would be nearly impossible once I returned, I still booked a flight and rushed back that very night. My Kai and Liu Ruyan both insisted on accompanying me. My mother and I hadn't seen each other in over a decade. My memories of her were still trapped in my childhood, back when she was constantly beaten and starved, looking like a walking skeleton wrapped in nothing but withered skin. Now standing outside the hospital room, I hesitated, my hand trembling on the door handle. Yunmo, let me go in with you. My Kai gently reached for my hand. Get lost. I shoved her back. Stay out here. Don't you dare follow me in. I pushed the door open and entered. At the sound of my approaching footsteps, my mother struggled to open her eyes. You finally came. Honestly, there's no other reason I asked to see you. I just wanted to say thank you. I stared at her, my gaze fixed and unmoving. I never wanted a thank you from my mother to begin with. All I ever desired was for her to finally be free. No thanks necessary. Saving you was my way of saving myself. The hospital door creaked open once again. It was my mother's current husband and daughter coming to visit. In the cramped, suffocating space of the ward, I was shoved aside until there was nowhere left to stand. Even in my mother's presence, I've never had a place where I truly belonged. I turned on my heel and headed for the exit. Suddenly, she called out to me at the top of her lungs, "Zhao Tai! I'm so sorry. All these years I took my rage out on you. I never treated you with the love you deserved." I paused for a fleeting second. Don't apologize for that either. I could finally empathize with her agonizing pain. Only by completely severing ties with me could she bid farewell to those traumatic memories and begin a brand new life. Outside the room, Liu Ruyan was staring at me in utter disbelief. What did that old woman just call him? Zhao Tai or Mitai let out a soft sigh. It's Yun Mo. That was his old name from years ago. His mother's maiden name is Yun, so he chose this new identity for himself. Liu Ruyan suddenly gripped her shoulders with startling force. Does he have a massive jagged scar on his right ankle? How on earth did you know that? Liu Ruyan stumbled back, her strength completely draining away. She collapsed onto a nearby waiting room chair. The savior she had been hunting for all these years was standing right in front of her the entire time. She had fantasized about this moment 1,000 times. Once she found that boy, she vowed to give him the very best the world had to offer and grant his every single wish. But now, not only had she given him absolutely nothing, she had actively done things that made him despise her. A few days later, my mother breathed her last. During the funeral, I didn't shed a single tear, but on the drive back, I abruptly demanded the car stop. I bolted to the roadside, losing all control as I broke down sobbing. As Liu Ruyan stepped out and reached out to comfort me, Mai Kai blocked her hand with a sharp movement. She felt that Liu Ruyan's concern for her husband was becoming increasingly inappropriate. Yunmo's mother was terminally ill. It was natural for her, his wife, to follow him back. But Liu Ruyan was just a distant relative with no real connection. Why would she abandon several massive deals just to follow us back? Mitai couldn't help but suspect her of harboring some unspeakable feelings for me. She threw a frigid, hostile glare at her. Liu Ruyan, I am more than capable of tending to my own husband. Don't trouble yourself, auntie. She turned around, attempting to embrace me, but I shoved her back with a roar. Get the hell away from me. I shrieked through a total breakdown. Just have some mercy on me. Mikai, don't show your face today and make me sick to my stomach. Scram, Mikai's hands froze midair as a sharp stabbing pain pierced through her chest. To me, had she really become such a revolting and unbearable existence? Was there truly no chance left for her to make amends? With a heavy heart and leaden steps, she turned and left. Over the following days, I still refused to see her, and she tactfully stayed out of my sight. However, the place where I stayed was surrounded 3 layers deep by her personal henchmen. After 2 weeks of house arrest deep in the middle of the night, Mai Kai finally reappeared. She sat at the edge of the bed, reaching out to caress my cheek with a light touch. You've withered away so much these past 2 weeks. I coldly slapped her hand away. How much longer do you plan on keeping me caged? For a lifetime, Mikai replied with a faint smile, leaning down to pull me into an embrace. I've already handled everything on the outside. From now on, I'm not going anywhere. I'll stay here with you and you'll stay with me. I know you're a man who values loyalty above all. If you ever try to leave me again, I'll make sure everyone you care about wishes they were dead. I sneered. You've truly lost your mind. I'm not crazy, Mikai whispered, squeezing me even tighter. But if you vanish again, I most certainly will be. The very next day, she ordered hundreds of suits and wedding gowns to be delivered, insisting we redo our 3rd anniversary wedding photos. The crew and lighting technicians were all in position. The moment the photographer was about to click the shutter, I suddenly grabbed a cake from the table and smashed it into Mikai. Go to hell. Who would ever want to take these photos with you? Mikai calmly wiped the cream from her body. There are plenty of backup wedding gowns and an endless supply of cakes. If you're not satisfied, feel free to keep throwing them. I pelted her over a dozen times that day. By the final strike, Mikai's brow furrowed slightly. As she gripped my wrist tightly, Yunmo, can we please just get through the photo shoot? Once we're done, I'm yours to punish. I gave a thin smile and smashed the cake directly into her face. No thanks. The wedding photo shoot never actually happened that day. The cake contained plum jam, a flavor I absolutely adore. But Mitai is severely allergic to it, and she collapsed onto the floor immediately. The moment she woke up that evening, she rushed to cook for me, but I refused to show her even a shred of gratitude. That night, just as she finished showering and tried to get in bed, I shoved her straight out of the door. You are forbidden from sleeping in my bed. You're filthy. Mikai chuckled softly. I just showered. I let out a cold laugh of my own. I'm not talking about physical dirt. I'm talking about the fact that you slept with Fang Yuan so many times. It's repulsive. Mikai's breathing hitched, and she didn't try to climb back into the bed. Instead, she grabbed some bedding and slept on the floor. The following morning, Maikai was jarred awake early by a call from the butler. Terrified of waking me, she crept out of the bedroom on her tiptoes. What is it, what, miss? CEO Liu is at the gate demanding to see you. Maikai made her way to the estate's entrance and found Liu Ruyan waiting outside. She smirked. The butler tells me that in just 2 weeks, my dear auntie has visited 6 times. Is there something urgent? Liu Ruyan's eyes bore into hers with intensity. I'm here to check on Yunmo. His phone has been turned off this entire time. Mikai, have you locked him away? Even if you are married, what you're doing is a blatant crime. Maikai let out a derisive snort. Auntie, so you finally remember that we are a married couple. As an elder, don't you think you're obsessing over Yunmo a bit too much? She took several steps closer. A low laugh escaped her lips. Even if Yunmo kissed you, it doesn't mean a damn thing. He only did it to provoke me. You don't actually think he's caught feelings for you, do you? Liu Ruyan froze her heart, skipping a beat. Auntie, don't bother coming back here anymore. Even if it's an emergency, stay away. You aren't welcome. On the way back to the bedroom, the mere thought of someone else lusting after my man sent a searing wave of jealousy through her entire soul. No, staying here is too risky. I have to move him to my private island immediately. She instantly ordered her assistant to finalize the arrangements. Over the next few days, she was completely preoccupied with the relocation. The day before everything was set, her assistant called in a frantic panic. Fang Yuan had tracked her down at the office to cause a scene. He was perched on the edge of the rooftop with both children, threatening to leap to his death if she didn't show her face. With a darkened expression, Mikai rushed to the company. Shortly after her departure, Liu Ruyan breached the estate with her own security team. When Liu Ruyan finally found me, I was standing motionless by the balcony. She stood beside me in a heavy silence for a long moment, until I finally shot her a look of pure annoyance. What the hell are you doing here? She summoned every ounce of her courage to speak. Do you remember when you were a young boy, saving a girl who had been kidnapped and trafficked? For years, Liu Ruyan had been the one taking care of everyone else. But the little boy in her memories was the only person who had ever truly looked after her. He was irredeemably special to her. Yet Liu Ruyan couldn't quite find the words to describe the complex emotions swirling within her. Her words hit me like a physical blow, locking me in place. It's me. Liu Ruyan's eyes shimmered with hope. You remember? I let out a harsh, cynical sneer. Of course I remember you. You're that lying, untrustworthy snake. Back then, she had solemnly promised that she would call the police the second she escaped. Years ago, my younger self had shared that tiny flicker of hope with my mother. Mother had actually smiled at me for the first time in forever. She was like an excited, anxious child, constantly whispering, "Is it true? You aren't lying to me, are you?" Of course not. She promised me she would do it. I beat my chest and gave her my word. But we waited and waited and waited. A month bled into a year dragged into several. Years slowly withered away, and yet not a single officer ever arrived to rescue us. Because of that, my mother grew to utterly loathe me. She believed I was exactly like my biological father, nothing but a pathetic, compulsive liar. In all the long years that followed, I never saw my mother smile at me again. I swear I called the police back then, but I fell dangerously ill right after, and when I woke, I couldn't recall the village's location. I've been desperately searching for you all this time. I brushed past her with a cold sneer. It doesn't matter now. If I have one regret, it's that I ever bothered saving you. I should have just left you to rot in that hellhole. If I had, my relationship with my mother wouldn't have been destroyed, and I wouldn't be forced to deal with Mikai, that revolting person who makes my skin crawl. Liu Ruyan stood frozen to the spot. Her chest tightened with a sharp, suffocating pressure, a stinging numbness spreading to her fingertips. Wait! She blocked my path. Yunmo, I'm sorry. I can't change the trauma of the past, but I can make things right now. If you refuse to stay here a second longer, I will help you escape right this instant. I halted my steps. Mikai is using my friends as leverage to threaten me. After I vanish, can you actually guarantee their safety? Liu Ruyan promised without hesitation. Consider it done. I fell silent for a fleeting moment. I'll trust you one last time. Only because I've run out of other options. Meanwhile, Mikai arrived at the company's rooftop, staring at Fang Yuan perched precariously outside the railing. Her eyes were void of warmth. You dare show your face again. Last time back overseas. If Fang Yuan hadn't crashed that room, things between me and her wouldn't have reached this breaking point. Fang Yuan looked at her with a face full of desperation. Mikai, we still have 2 children together. Are you really going to cast me aside like trash? After everything that had transpired? He finally realized this woman was heartless to the core and completely unreliable. But he had been pampered in luxury since childhood. And after that, he became Mikai's pampered lapdog. Aside from blowing through cash, he possessed 0 survival skills to speak of. Worse yet, he had 2 helpless children in tow, backed into a corner with no other options. All he could do was crawl back and beg Mikai for mercy. Mikai let out a frigid sneer. If it weren't for your constant meddling, Yunmo and I would never have reached this breaking point. I honestly wish I could just end you myself. As for those 2 children, they're nothing more than mistakes sired by a coward like you. Whether you live or die, I couldn't care less. Her casual, loathsome words shattered the final shred of hope Feng Yuan had left. He collapsed onto the ground, his eyes welling with absolute hollow despair. He had no reason left to keep living. But in the depths of that soul-crushing hopelessness, an unprecedented surge of rage ignited within Feng Yuan's chest. Yeah, I spit on you. Do you really think I ruined your relationship? If your love was truly that unshakable, could I have lured you into my bed time and time again? And now, you're trying to pin all the blame on me. Flies only swarm to rotten eggs you were trashed to begin with, which is why you tangled yourself with someone like me. Mai Kai let out a sharp, mocking laugh, casting one last glance at him as if he were a performing monkey. As she turned to leave the rooftop, Mai Kai heard Feng Yuan's blood-curdling hysterical shriek. Mikai, I curse you, I hope you never get what your heart desires. I hope you die a miserable, lonely death. Mai Kai merely scoffed at his pathetic outburst, but the moment she stepped out of the headquarters building, several dark shadows plummeted past her at terminal velocity. Following a sickening thud, Mitai stood paralyzed for a few seconds. Once she recognized the mangled, broken corpses before her, her face instantly turned as white as a sheet. In that fleeting second, she couldn't tell if she was more consumed by terror or by sheer paralyzing shock. With a triple homicide on the scene, she was hauled off to the precinct for questioning. By the time she finally returned home late that night, she was met with a nightmare. Every single bodyguard in the villa had been bound and gagged by Mi Yun. Every security camera had been systematically destroyed, and I was already long gone without a trace. She was on the verge of a total mental breakdown. She frantically shook the unconscious butler, screaming at the top of her lungs, demanding to know. The butler was jolted awake by her fury. Miss, it was your aunt. She stormed in with her men and took the master away. It was Liu Ruyan. Mai Kai hissed the name through her clenched teeth. In this very moment, she truly wished she could tear that woman apart limb from limb. She immediately ordered a total lockdown on all city traffic, but it was already far too late. At that exact time, I was already aboard a private jet soaring far beyond the border. After a grueling full day of travel, the plane touched down in a secluded foreign town. Liu Ruyan had already pre-arranged a secure residence here, where she helped me settle into my new life. It's been 5 days already. Everything is sorted and the paperwork is done. Why haven't you left yet? Liu Ruyan stiffened at my words. This was officially the 8th time I had tried to kick her out. Yunmo, I just want to wait until you're fully adjusted to the area before I go. I'm already perfectly adjusted to this place. You don't need to worry your head about it. I locked the door, preparing to head to a local bistro for a meal. I genuinely appreciate the assist you gave me, but I saved your life back in the day too. Consider us even from here on out, of course. If you really want, I can treat you to one last dinner before you vanish. Liu Ruyan lowered her head, looking completely dejected. You really despise me that much? I let out a dry chuckle. I thought I was being incredibly obvious about it. Liu Ruyan flashed a bitter pained smile. I'll leave this afternoon. Then I wish you a safe flight. I spent the next 3 years living in that quiet town. During those 3 years, I successfully developed several breakthrough tech products and built my very own corporate empire from scratch. However, since it wasn't convenient for me to show my face, the companies were all registered under Song Hao's name. Every holiday, despite knowing she wasn't exactly welcome, Liu Ruyan would still find an excuse to visit. The fact that she was head over heels for me was plain as day. I wasn't blind to it either, but I had zero interest in diving into another romance with an unpredictable ending. I felt that being alone was perfectly fine. I have no need for a companion on this journey. When the new year of the 3rd year arrived, I gave Liu Ruyan a firm and final rejection. But as the 4th new year loomed on the horizon, news of Mikai reached my ears for the first time in forever. Except it was the news of her tragic death. Throughout all these silent years, she had been scouring the globe like a madwoman for any sign of me. But with Liu Ruyan constantly sabotaging her efforts, she hit a dead end at every single turn. Mai Kai slowly spiraled into a state of pure insanity. A few years back, she had stormed into Liu Ruyan's office with a blade, nearly plunging it into her heart in a homicidal rage. Aside from her obsession with finding me, she was plagued by agonizing sleepless nights. Every time she dared to close her eyes, Feng Yuan and those 2 children would haunt her twisted dreams. Drenched in a gruesome coating of blood, they would stare at her with hollow eyes in a deafening silence. I'm not sure if this was divine retribution or the remnants of a dying conscience drowning in guilt. As time dragged on, she succumbed to severe crippling depression. Only a few days ago, clutching our wedding portrait tightly to her chest, she took a final leap from the rooftop of her company. I traveled back home to attend her funeral. The priest read aloud Mitai's final suicide note. The message was hauntingly brief. The very second I chose to betray you, I convinced myself it was just a trivial, minor lapse, an insignificant mistake I could bury forever. But in reality, my entire life began to crumble from that single moment of self-destruction. I'm sorry, the past is buried with the dead, and all our bitter grudges have vanished like smoke. What I remember now is that 18-year-old girl, a blushing Mitai standing nervously before me. Hello, fellow student. Would you mind if we exchanged contact info? Back then, the sunlight hit her face at the perfect angle, just like the light now caressing her final resting place.